We're back, Health Psych. This is part 2 of the obesity lecture. And I want to start talking about kind of culture and the meaning of food. If we were interacting in class, I would ask many of you about your families and about kind of what you grew up with in terms of families. How many of you were in, say, the Clean Plate Club, meaning that you had to clean your plate before you were allowed to get up after dinner and go do anything, that type of thing. And then I want you to watch the Jamie Oliver clip about culture. I believe this is the clip where he is in West Virginia in Huntington, and he is trying to get the lunches to be healthier food, and he goes at it with the lunch ladies, and they end up giving him the evil eye, that type of thing, because he's sort of blaming these people that have to cook for the masses, these women that are cooking in these cafeterias, for the poor food choices. And they're sort of saying, like, look, we're on this menu, they send us this food, it's our job to prepare it for these kids, they're not the ones at fault. And so one of the things that you see, and I know this to be very true, particularly in my work with clients and clients with eating disorders and whatnot, what we are able to eat and what we are able to put in our mouths is very personal to us. And many of us will have these strong feelings about foods that we really, really love and enjoy. We have these strong feelings about food that we find to be yucky and disgusting and we really can't stand. We oftentimes have these very fond memories if we've had good family moments surrounding certain kinds of foods that people cook from our families. Oftentimes people will have lots of identity with their own ethnicity related to the kinds of food that they eat. And so food is very personal. I want to talk about socioeconomic status. We know that people of lower SES, we've talked about this before in nutrition, are more likely to rely on getting their food from fast food restaurants. Because of that, they're getting large portions. They're getting food that is very dense in calories and fat, and they're getting food that is not very dense in positive nutrition. And so we tend to see, based on socioeconomic status, a bit of a difference in who does shopping and cooking for families. With people that are more well-to-do and more educated and have more money and more resources are more likely to shop and do fresh fruits and vegetables, as an example, more likely to prepare food, cook for their families. That tends to result in healthier eating. We know that for a lot of individuals, when they are under intense stress, if they tend to be restrained eaters would be somebody who is being very careful about their food. They're oftentimes dieting. They're oftentimes trying to lose weight or control their weight. They are restricting their food intake and restraining from eating. Those individuals, when they get stressed, are a lot more likely to binge eat than individuals who are not restrained eaters. Those individuals who are not restrained eaters, when they get really, really stressed, they're more likely to lose their appetite and not eat as much and lose weight. Okay, so being a restrained eater, you would think that that would predict being of low weight or lean weight, but actually being a restrained eater is a prediction for binge eating and weight gain. Also know that 20% of people with obesity also can be diagnosed with binge eating disorder. And so when we get in there as healthcare providers and we are treating individuals, if they have binge eating disorder, we treat the binge eating first. Because what you don't want is to try to help a binge eater lose weight. If you try to help a binge eater lose weight, more food restriction is going to end up creating more binge eating. You've made the problem worse. And so what we do is treat and actually try to punish and bring down the episodes of binge eating, making them less frequent, making them shorter and shorter. And then for a lot of people, once they stop binge eating, they naturally lose weight, or their weight goes back to what would be considered a normal set point. We know that we do tend to mimic and mirror the eating habits of people around us. Just as an example, men tend to eat more rapidly and eat more than most women do. And so when women eat in the company of men, they oftentimes tend to eat more than they normally would if they were eating by themselves or meeting in the company of women. And so our activity and our body size tends to mimic our friends and partners. Some of that has to do with social attraction or romantic attraction to people. Where this information has gone wrong in the media, though, you hear me gripe about the media a lot, so I'm gonna do that a little bit more on this part of the lecture, is that the media has taken this and they've even come out with stories like obesity is contagious. This idea of taking this fat stigma and this fat prejudice and this like, oh my gosh, if you hang around larger people, it's going to be contagious and it's going to make you gain weight and become obese also. And this certainly fuels fat stigma in our culture. It's horrible. Environmentally, we've talked about intuitive eating this semester, and I am a big fan of encouraging health at every size and intuitive eating. And remember, intuitive eating is that ideally, as long as we have an eating disorder, we can learn how to do this, that ideally we eat when we are hungry until we are satisfied, listening to our bodies until we're satisfied, and then we quit eating. And intuitive eating would be the opposite of clean plate club. Clean plate club would be you've been served a plate of food that maybe you didn't even pick and choose how much food and what kinds of foods are on that plate. But boy, you're supposed to clean that plate and eat all of that food, whether you want it or not. Intuitive eating would be, and keep in mind, you've got to have privilege to be able to do this. A lot of people without privilege and food scarcity do not have the privilege of being able to eat intuitively, meaning going and picking what you eat at what time, preparing the food, eating and enjoying the food, and then stopping when you're satisfied would be intuitive eating. So a lot of times people use cues from time of day, what's served to them. People overdo it on buffets when they've got a variety of food, depending on alcohol intake, sensitivity to ads and food cues. Lots of different reasons why people eat and overeat. Okay, so the lifestyle approach, a while back I talked about these two camps, this camp number 1 and camp number 2. Camp number 1, traditional, what lay people believe, what a lot of healthcare providers believe, the traditional medical model, and then camp number 2 over here, fat acceptance movement and health at every size. The place where these camps can reconcile is a health behavior lifestyle approach. And you all know I'm all about health behavior. And so this is where I reconcile these differences. But there's some important data in this slide that I want you all to absorb that really shows that the science actually supports camp number 2, fat acceptance movement and health at every size. It's really about the lifestyle behavior. And so I've already talked about the fact that it's obesity plus sedentary lifestyle that really is the culprit. It's not obesity alone, it's obesity plus the sedentary lifestyle. So healthful eating and getting regular exercise are absolute key to health. So Stephen Blair, he was at the Cooper Institute, now he's at USC Public Health, and he's the former president of the American College of Sports Medicine, so the exercise people. And he has found that people who are fat, who have larger bodies, who exercise on a regular basis, they are healthier than thin people who are sedentary. So just because somebody's thin, we can't like look at a thin person and go, oh, they're lean, they must be absolutely healthy, because we don't know what's going on inside their bodies. We're just making a judgment based on their body size, which is not a very good judgment. We call these larger bodies, if you know about mini triathlons or triathlons, people get to compete in weight categories, and we call these larger women Athenas, which I think is beautiful, these Greek goddesses. They call the larger guys Clydesdales, which I find to be kind of funny, these big old horses associated with beer. Okay, he has also found that mortality, the death rate for thin but unfit people is twice more than those who are fat and fit. So absorb that. Fitness reduces illness, and fitness reduces mortality regardless of one's weight, which is the health at every size philosophy. Okay, so it really, the culprit is, everybody, can't hit this home hard enough, sedentary lifestyle. Sedentary lifestyle is the thing that is dangerous. Lack of fitness is the thing that is dangerous. fountain of youth is regular exercise and fitness. What we also know here is up to 40% of people who are obese, actually, if you look inside their bodies, they are healthy. They have normal cholesterol, they have normal blood pressure, if they don't smoke, and they are physically fit. So again, take home point here, it's obesity plus sedentary lifestyle that is the dangerous part of this. Food environment. So I want to talk about the default, the normative food environment for most of us is quite the predictor in how we are going to eat. So I want to talk about the fast food study first. We know that if people are given the right amount of information and the kind of information that they can absorb, it helps them in their food choices. People make better decisions in environments where they have information about their food. So in this one particular study, they randomly assigned different fast food restaurants where in one condition, number one, I'm over on the right hand on number one in the blue, if they were given no information, so here's the menu and there's no information about nutrition, that was group one. Randomly assigned to group two, they had the menu, and so as an example, let's say a regular hamburger, they were given information about the calorie content. So regular hamburger, about 250 calories. In the third condition, these restaurants randomly assigned, they were given information about the burger, how many calories in that burger, and then they were told how many miles they would have to walk briskly to burn off the number of calories in that burger. Now, I can tell you that this is added information, but unless you are a walker or a runner or sometimes a cyclist, you don't know miles. Like 2.6 miles, like would, I don't know, that take a day to walk? Would it take like 5 minutes to walk? How long does it take to walk? Only if you do that behavior would you understand that. So the fourth condition, which is actually the most successful condition of these restaurants getting randomly assigned to these different levels of information, they were told they've got the menu, they've got the stuff on the menu that, okay, there's a burger and the burger has 250 calories and it would take 78 minutes to walk briskly to burn the number of calories in that burger. People can relate to time. They might not be able to relate to distance, but they can relate to time. And if you look over here on the left under fast food study, what you find is that the typical meal that they selected, if they had no information, had over 1,000 calories in it, kilocalories. Those with just the calorie information, that went down to 927. Those with the calorie information and the number of minutes that they had to walk, that boiled down to a selection of a meal with only 916 calories in that meal. Imagine people doing that over and over and over again on a daily basis, picking a meal with 916 kilocalories versus one with over 1,000. That's going to make a difference in that person's health. So having the right information and the information in a way that people can absorb it available is going to have quite the impact on their lifestyle and how they consume food. Another way of doing this is the traffic light diet. I've done the traffic light diet with families before. It's a lot of fun. You start helping people classify foods according to green foods, or go for it, eat all you want of these foods that get classified as green. Yellow, be cautious, don't consume a whole lot of that. And red foods, stay away from that kind of stuff if you are trying to be healthy. So a red food would be ice cream, cakes, and candies, that type of thing. When I've worked with families and I've worked with kids and we've done stoplight diet, we get these stickers and we will have the whole family like go into their cabinets and label their foods red, yellow, green, or when they're shopping in the grocery store, label these things or label the stuff in the refrigerators. And then the target goal is to increase the number of foods that they are simply eating that are green light. Be careful with the yellow and really try to stay away from the stuff that is considered to be red light. Again, families love it, kids love it. It is a way to simplify the information in a way that helps people make food choices. Remember back in the nutrition lecture, we talked about most of us make over 200 food decisions a day. I'm about to make some here in a bit. I'm getting hungry. I'm going to get myself some lunch. I'm going to make myself a food decision. We make a lot of food decisions. It can be overwhelming from a cognitive perspective to know how to make these healthy choices. So in this cafeteria study, when in the cafeteria they just put these labels on foods, they found that it decreased over time the number of red food items that people consumed, and it increased the number of green items by 5% across 2 years having this information available. When I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, whenever I would go out to a restaurant, I love the fact that all the restaurants were teamed up with the Medical University of South Carolina, and the restaurants would put these labels on their foods. And all you'd have to do is you'd open up the menu and you could kind of scan the menu, and they would have a little red heart next to a meal that was considered to be heart healthy. And so it would just help with food choices. You could scan the menu and then find the foods with the heart healthy, and you knew that if you picked that menu item, it was one that was considered to be good nutrition, lower in cholesterol, lower in saturated fats, a good choice if you were trying to keep your cardiovascular system healthy. And it worked. A lot of people would use that food label to help them with that. To give you another example down here, just look at these. Okay, so here on the left is the typical label that the FDA requires for our food labels, and there's a lot of information and a lot there. It is hard to sort of absorb that information and figure out how to use that. But then take a look at the little label on the right that just simply says, drinking beverages with added sugar contributes to obesity, diabetes, and tooth decay. Very clear warning, makes a lot of sense. People can have clear, educated choices with that kind of stuff. Okay, so I want to talk about community policy interventions, thinking top down in our culture. What is being done more from a policy and a legal standpoint to try to help individuals for us to deal with our obesity issues? The Rudd Center for Food Policy and Obesity it's up at Yale University. It's an advocacy center. They do a lot of proposing policies to try to help the U.S. become healthier, to make our default options healthier. So an example would be they lobbied to get restaurants prohibited from cooking with trans fats. They have done lobbying to try to keep soda machines out of reach of children's access, so keeping soda machines out of school systems as an example. They also have done a lot of laws and advocacy trying to address obesity stigma in U.S. culture. So they've done stuff as an example of trying to prevent airlines from charging obese individuals more for 2 seats on airlines when lean people only have to pay for 1 seat, stuff like that. I want you to know that they've also advocated for food advertising laws. So just to give you some examples of what some other states have done that has actually been very effective. In Chile, that country, they're not allowed to have cartoon advertisements on sugary cereals. In the United Kingdom and Australia, they're not allowed to advertise food commercials for unhealthy foods during kids shows, as an example. We don't tend to do this in the US. In California restaurants, as an example, their kids' meals are served with water or milk, but they're not served with a sugary beverage. And then I want you to watch the clip. It's not the most exciting thing, but I want you to watch Kelly Brownell. He is a clinical health psychologist. He's up at Yale. He himself has struggled with weight issues throughout his life, so he kind of knows it from his own personal standpoint. And what he's talking about is the fact that if we have these default foods and beverages available, people will consume them. If, on the other hand, our default is that we all have easier access to really healthy foods, then we will consume the healthier foods. And so he talks about the obesogenic default in US culture, that most people are just exposed. It's easy to be sedentary. It's easy to get high calorie, high fat, fast food. It is not easy to be active. It is not easy to afford and have access to really healthy foods. So when it comes to thinking about treating obesity, certainly my goal is health and not just weight loss or weight management. I was trained to do a comprehensive assessment for people to take a look at their whole lifestyle throughout their whole life and what their weight has done throughout their lives. I learned when I worked in weight management, when I would do this comprehensive assessment, that a lot of people would start gaining weight upon graduating high school. A lot of people would gain a good amount of weight upon partnering, like if individuals partnered in a domestic partnership or got married. A lot of people gain weight after those life events. I learned that a lot of women, this blew my mind, particularly after I had had a baby and I was working in weight management. There are women out there who really take that eating for two very generously, very seriously. And I worked with women who had gained 50, 100, 150 pounds during their pregnancy. Most women need to gain about 30 pounds in a pregnancy to have a healthy body weight and a healthy baby. But a lot of women, again, they take that eating for two, and they will eat in a way as if they're eating for a full human adult body and not a fetus that ideally is born at around 7.5 pounds. A friend of mine said, I do think this is a funny story. She had a C-section, and as they took the baby out and let her know that the baby was fine and healthy, she, with her sense of humor, she says to the OBGYN, she says, that better be an 80-pound baby, because that's how much weight she had gained. All right, let's go to dealing with expectations. One of the things I also learned when I worked in weight management, and I would see, like, let's say I'm working with this woman, and let's say she's 300 pounds. And I find out that before she had a baby in life and when she got married in her early 20s, she weighed 120 pounds. And here she is at 300 pounds, and she, once upon a time in adulthood, she weighed 120 pounds. She's going to be in trouble if her weight loss goal is to get all the way back to 120 pounds, because you know what? Probability wise, she's not. And so if she goes on her lifestyle plan or her diet with the thought that she needs to be losing weight rapidly and she wants to get back to 120 pounds quite soon, if she's 300 pounds where she starts out, she's going to get really disappointed, and because she's not going to be successful at that. And then most people give up. So the dealing with expectations part is a lot of times what we need to do is to help individuals realize that if they can lose about 10% of their body weight, and if you remember in the diabetes study, when they lost 8% of their body weight, if they can lose about 10% of their body weight, for most people, that is associated with a significant improvement of their health, improvement in cholesterol, improvement in blood pressure, that is going to make a difference in their health. So 10%, whereas a lot of people are hoping to lose things like 200%, something crazy like that, which is just not realistic. We've got the issue of diets versus food plans. We know that if we provide people with food provision, so this would be stuff like drinking Slim Fast or Jenny Craig having meals delivered to them, that tends to work better for a lot of individuals because it takes the decision making out of the picture. If, on the other hand, people are relying on making their own food choices, trying to cut back on their food, but they are buying and preparing their food, a lot of times we just don't know how much energy is in the food. So the food provision tends to work, but it doesn't tend to transition or generalize really well. In guidelines to people in primary care for primary care doctors, and this is some hot off the press scientific research, the recommendation for people in primary care, healthcare providers, is that if we can provide individuals across 6 months with 14 counseling sessions, all aimed at eating more healthy food, cutting back on calories and particularly fat in food, counseling in stress management, counseling in getting them exercising, that tends to amount to, on average, 8% weight loss. And 8% weight loss is going to have an impact on their health. Then what they advocate is for counseling 1 year after weight loss to help people maintain that lifestyle, to help people maintain that weight loss. The recommendation in exercise in these guidelines in primary care is that people are getting at least 150, if not at least 180 minutes of very vigorous exercise a week. The behavior modification part of this is weekly weighing, just once a week. If people weigh more than once a week, they tend to get superstitious. Asking people to record their food intake. In the old days, we did these in paper and pencil food diaries. Nowadays, there are apps that people can get for their phones that help them monitor, meaning writing every single thing down that they put in their mouth, every single thing down that they drink in terms of beverages. That is going to be more successful if they record than if they don't record. Because most of us eat a lot more than we think we do, and we start recording, we're like, oh, you know, I thought I used to eat a cookie a night, and it turns out I really, you know, I kind of mindlessly eat, I don't know, 6 cookies a night when I'm watching TV. So the recording is going to help them. They found in the research, and this makes a lot of sense in modern day time, this probably wouldn't have worked 10 years ago, but people prefer the smartphone app over the paper and pencil. And that makes sense because most people keep their smartphones with them. Most of the time, it's easier to be able to record than if they have, you know, stored back at home in their kitchen, a piece of paper. They also advocate that people are cutting back 500 to 750 kilocalories a day. And so that's the dietary restriction that they're recommending for these individuals to help them with that weight loss. So it is effective. These are the recommendations for primary care. This is not standard care in primary care, but we've got the scientific data now on what is useful and what is effective. And if we could disseminate and get this out to primary care, and more healthcare providers could be using it. This is one of the reasons why integrative care is more effective than traditional biomedical medicine in a primary care clinic. If you've got health psychologists out there who know how to do this counseling, and that is available in your primary care office, more people are going to get this type of intervention, are going to get these treatments, and are going to have good health effects out of it than if that's not available in primary care. Medications. In the old days, they prescribed stimulants or speed, seriously, to individuals that would help them with their appetite, help speed up their metabolism. Some of the stimulants that were in prescription, Redux or Fen-Phen, other amphetamines were being prescribed by doctors, things like Phentermine. There were medications that were sold as supplements like ephedra and mahang. That in an unprecedented event, the Federal Drug Administration, that normally does not regulate supplements, got in there and pulled these medications off the market. And then the FDA black marked these stimulant medications. Physicians are not supposed to be using these for weight loss because all of this stuff was killing people. And so a very dangerous way to help people with meds lose weight. There are a couple modern day medications that do seem to add to effectiveness. Victoza is a medication that is used to prevent diabetes or to treat type 2 diabetes. It controls blood glucose. That works best if added to regular exercise for people trying to lose weight. The fat absorption blockers, Orlistat, Xenical, Ally, these are all medications that if you take it, you've got to be very careful with your fat consumption because these blocks fat from being absorbed in the digestive tract. And so if you are taking these meds and you overdo your dietary fat, there's this thing called dumping syndrome. And it sounds like it is dumping syndrome. Your body goes, oh crap. Literally, figuratively, it says, I can't handle this. And then this person gets this horrible, oily, rapid diarrhea, and their body gets rid of the dietary fat that they have now ingested. When I worked in weight management at MUSC, I still remember my first day as a pre-doc. I had the postdoc show me around the whole clinic, and we go into this kitchen. There are 2 big refrigerators in the kitchen, and the postdoc tells me, Denise, you put your lunch in this fridge. You don't put your lunch in that fridge. So of course I'm curious. I'm like, hey, what's in the fridge? I don't want to put my lunch in. She says it's the people who are enrolled in the Orlistat study. They have to donate their feces in these containers, and we store the feces in this refrigerator until the lab comes and gets the feces and studies what is going on in these people taking these meds. I could tell you that these people are on these meds have really fatty stools. And also, I know from my days in weight management, having gone and used the public bathroom in this clinic, that a lot of these people who are on this orlistat trial would have to poop in our public bathrooms in the clinic. And you all, I think you know this, fat and water don't mix. And so I would walk into these stalls and people would flush and flush and flush, and the feces from those orlistat stools, it wouldn't flush well. And it had a very distinct smell. And it was just gross going in and seeing other people, you know, these toilets other people have used, and their feces are floating and just wouldn't flush. It was just gross. Okay. On that note, I hope everybody's wasn't hungry and about ready to eat after that story. I want to talk about that one last, this other drug, Belviq, I think is how you pronounce that. This is a drug that activates serotonin and helps control appetite in some individuals. And the research suggests this does help people, if they're on these meds, maintain a little more weight loss a year than just lifestyle without the meds, 3 to 6 kilograms a year. Personally, I'm not very impressed with that, but hey, they've got FDA approval and they market their drug based on that. From a behavior modification standpoint, we are trying to get people to change their eating habits and their exercise. There's also data managing stress helps people lose weight and keep their weight off more easily though. And so changing that energy balance, behavior mod, helping people learn how to shop, how to cook, how to prepare food, giving the social support. The food recording we just talked about, the phone apps work better. It is even better if not only are they recording food, but they're getting feedback on the food. The food apps can do that immediately. When I work in weight management with people, I'll ask to see their food diaries and I give them feedback. So an example, let's say they had iced tea on their diary, or in the South, like we say, sweet tea. If they, I would ask, are you consuming the sweet tea or are you consuming iced tea that is not sweetened? If they're doing the sweet tea, then we often start to have them do half and half. Can you try doing half of your tea with sugar, half of the tea unsweetened? Can you move yourself to drinking more tea without sugar at all? That's going to be healthier in the long run than in consuming that sugar. Cognitive restructuring, helping them change their thought processes to help them being more mindful. We know mindfulness eating. This is one of those places where if you pray before you eat, that's a really good thing. If you don't believe in prayer and you don't pray before you eat, just becoming mindful, having some gratitude, slowing it down, picking your food, tasting your food, enjoying the pleasure, enjoying the primary reinforcement in that food, being mindful, slowing it down. You're going to get a lot more reinforcement out of that than if you sit down and you just pack food in, you don't even taste it. You're just packing it in and you're not enjoying the taste and the pleasure of the food. Urge surfing is this term, kind of, it started in the addictions literature, but urge surfing is taking, like, let's say a craving for maybe an unhealthy food. So a big pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream or something like that. Urge surfing would be delaying. We talked about delay techniques when we talked about cigarette smoking cessation. Surfing the urge and riding it, and oftentimes that craving just goes away on its own without a need to go and get that food. And then we do a lot of motivational interviewing conversations when we're working with people to help them change their lifestyle and eat healthier. The commercial programs, Weight Watchers, when I'm working with people and they need more extra social support in their health journey and their weight management, I like Weight Watchers. I don't own stock in Weight Watchers, but I refer people to it. It's a point system. They used to have people counting calories, and nowadays they have simplified the calorie counting into counting points, which cognitively, remember 200 plus food decisions a day, is easier for people to understand and translate. It's kind of like that stoplight diet we just talked about. In a review of scientific studies that have studied Weight Watchers, which they've actually now moved to WW, somewhere between less than or losing 3.1 to 7.8% of body weight in 6 months. So it is effective at helping people lose weight, and it costs approximately $40 a month. Jenny Craig is one of those programs where people order their meals online and they have the meals delivered to them. And so that's a food provision program, meaning that all you eat if you're on the Jenny Craig is you eat their meal, frozen meal, you heat it up, of course. Nobody likes it, eating it frozen. For breakfast, eating the frozen meal for lunch, eating the frozen meal for dinner. It takes all the decision making out of the formula. It takes all the ability to cheat on food out of the formula. It is quite effective in scientific research. People lose between 7.1 and 10.9% of their weight in a year. So it is effective, but it is expensive, ladies and gentlemen. $750 a month. That's quite the grocery bill. And again, there's not a lot of the other grocery bill other than, supplies, your cosmetic stuff, your toilet paper, your laundry detergent, that kind of stuff. But that is expensive. And then for people with morbid obesity who already have health problems with medical conditions, it is recommended that they get medically supervised, either very low calorie diets. And a lot of times these very low calorie diets nowadays, it would be like prescription formula Slim Fast. So it would be a drink that they drink multiple times a day. They have gotten much better over time at making sure that these drinks are protein sparing, making sure that these drinks have liquid minerals and vitamins in them so that people are getting really good concentrated nutrition in these liquid diets. And then they've even added fiber over time, because in the old days people would be on a liquid diet and they get all kinds of constipation. So they've come a long way with this stuff. It induces very rapid weight loss, which can be quite reinforcing for the person who is doing it. It's motivating. It's sort of like, oh my gosh, I've struggled to lose weight and I've been doing this VLCD and I'm losing 5 pounds a week. That's very motivating. I want to keep doing this. I'm starting to feel like I've got more energy. I'm feeling healthier. My doctor's telling me I'm healthier. But again, under medical supervision. The surgical piece to it, I'll talk about here in a little bit. We're going to talk about the processes, but I do want to talk about childhood obesity. And I do want to talk about Lenny Epstein's work. He has done brilliant work with families. Note that 1/3 of parents of overweight children think their kid's about the right weight. So a lot of parents, if their child is at risk, a lot of parents, because their kids look like them, my kids sort of look like me growing up, a lot of parents just don't realize that their kid is at risk if their kids look like them. This kind of begs the question, should schools send feedback? We've got this dilemma when schools measure body weight and BMI and send home feedback. That for a lot of individuals can be triggering when it comes to risk for eating disorders. It can even be triggering for kids who have larger bodies. And remember, fat stigma actually creates weight gain, and it can create eating disorder behavior. And so we've got a dilemma of, if schools send home feedback to parents, are they doing it in a way that is reducing risk of creating eating disorder behavior? That kind of begs the rule of, what's the role of pediatricians, and what is the best way for pediatricians to give feedback to kids, to give feedback to parents and guardians, how to do this sensitively in a way that doesn't stigmatize. Again, remember Camp 1 and Camp 2, the best way to reconcile those philosophical differences is to advocate for lifestyle change. That doesn't matter if it's an adult advocating for lifestyle change, for kids and families advocating for lifestyle change. We should be encouraging all family members to be eating more healthfully, to be getting more exercise together, for kids to be learning exercise that is lifestyle exercise and not necessarily exercise that is competitive sports. Epstein's research longitudinally, when he randomly assigns these kids to this family intervention, 30% of them 10 years out are no longer obese when they started out as obese in the research studies. 34% of them still are reduce their overweight 10 years out. His program includes behavior modification. We know if we limit Kids, screen time. Boy, I worry about what's going on with COVID and quarantine. How much time kids are spending on their screens now. You're doing it right now. You're to blame. You're on the screen. You need to be on the screen watching this lecture. So I'm just teasing you. But I do worry about people are probably doing a lot more sedentary behavior, a lot more screen time. If kids are limited in their screen time, they will naturally go and get more physically active. In the home, naturally, if they're allowed to play outside, if it's safe to play outside, they'll get more physically active if parents limit their screen time. He gets everybody involved in the family. It's not just the kid who might need to lose weight involved in the intervention. The whole family starts shopping and cooking together. The whole family engages in exercise. This is the most effective treatment we know of for kids and teens that are at risk. All right, you all know I am a fan of lifestyle change. This is one of the places in the literature where we actually find that a medical intervention, that a surgical intervention tends to work well for individuals when they have access to bariatric surgery. It is best that when individuals go for this surgery, most bariatric surgeons will absolutely make sure that people go and see a psychologist for screening. And that is a good thing. That's a good tradition that we've got in this surgical world, that a health psychologist screens them in their lifestyle, previous dieting, screens and make sure they're not severely depressed. Severely depressed people should not be given this surgery. People who are binge eaters should not be given this surgery right away. People of really low IQ should not be given this surgery. And people who do not have social support should not be given the surgery. The reason for this is that after the surgery, these people have to engage in dramatic lifestyle change. They need to be very careful to eat very small portions of food throughout their day. They need to be careful to not drink a lot when they eat. I can't imagine eating food without the lubrication of drinking. I drink a lot of fluid when I eat. I can't imagine eating and not being able to drink fluid at the same time. They have to be very careful with giving liquid, vitamin, and mineral supplements to keep their bodies healthy, because if their stomach gets really, really small and they are not able to follow that food program, if they binge eat and overeat, they could blow. Their stomach, after being stapled like this, could blow and create sepsis, and they could die from blowing, and all that bacteria that needs to stay in the digestive tract, if it gets out, that's really bad. Low IQ individuals may not understand the dramatic lifestyle change that they have to make after this. Severely depressed people can't mobilize their resources. So psychologists get in there and they make sure that people are psychologically healthy enough to be able to plan for the surgery. A lot of these surgeons ask for X amount of weight loss before the surgery. Best predictor of behavior is previous behavior. If people can start engaging in this lifestyle change and lose X amount of weight before they're allowed the surgery, they're going to likely be more successful after the surgery. We know that people who go for these surgeries have a lot of psychological issues. 31% of them have comorbid mood disorders like depression. 50% of these people have disordered eating. That disordered eating needs to be treated before they're allowed to have these surgeries. 24% of them have anxiety disorders, and about 10% substance abuse disorders. I want to tell you about MUSC woman. I still remember interviewing this woman, and we were calculating as I was interviewing her daily food and intake. She would go and get a cheeseburger and fries every day, and that's all she ate. And she was about 400 pounds, and she really, in normal ignorance, had no idea how she had become 400 pounds. So I'm sitting with her, I'm calculating the cheeseburger and french fries and milkshake that she would get once a day. And I'm even realizing, like, if that's all I ate every day, I would be losing weight on that diet. Like, that's not sufficient calories to explain a woman getting up to 400 pounds. Until I asked her, what do you drink every day? And she would go to 7-Eleven on her way to work, and she would get a big gulp of Dr. Pepper, and she would drink that big gulp while she was at work that day, 8 hours of work. She would reward herself. She would go to 7-Eleven on her way home and buy another big gulp of Dr. Pepper, and she would drink that at home in the evening. So she was having 2 big gulps every day. And then we calculated the calories that she was getting from the fast food and the big gulps every day. And then it was like, it's no wonder you continue to gain weight on this diet. She had no idea, in normal ignorance, that she was consuming that many calories from her beverages every day. Okay, I want you to watch this YouTube clip of how this bariatric surgery is performed. We get our best long-term, rapid, total weight loss and health outcomes from this surgery. Most recent data, 20 to 35% weight loss at 1 year. These individuals do better after the surgery if they are recommended they weigh weekly. Not every day, weigh weekly. They keep chart of their weight loss. If they are trained and told stop eating when you're full. Now, these people get full really, really fast. This is why it works, because they have to do these really small portions of food. Again, not a lot of beverage while they're eating. And then, you know, they just get full very quickly because their stomach feels full. They are encouraged to eat meals, not graze all throughout the day. And they lose 14% more than those without these health behaviors. Long-term data on meta-analyses, BMI over 40, they have about 20 to 30 kilogram loss over 10 years. Those with a BMI 35 to 39 have some success over 10 years. Mortality rate's actually low. Less than 1% of people die after the surgery. Those who do die oftentimes die of starvation. 20% had adverse events, but only 1% of people out there who would be eligible for bariatric surgery get this surgery. The jaw wiring, nobody does this anymore. I'm not going to talk about that. All right, that is the end of part 2 of obesity. I hope everybody's well out there. I will see you soon. Take care.